Now, Wits University protests have gripped the nation over the last few days. A man who wasn't involved in the student protest has died, allegedly at the hands of police. Meanwhile, the students themselves have vowed to soldier on until their demands for free, quality and decolonised higher education are met. Let's get to the university side of the story now. We're joined by the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, this morning. Prof, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning and welcome to the show. The story and the issue of funding for higher education, it's a wide-ranging one. It has various players involved. Give us a sense from the university of how the university's responsibility for funding, where it starts and where it ends.
Yes. Just to give you a few facts here, good morning. Wits has registered around 95% of the 2021 cohort, about 35,000, just over 35,000 students out of the 37,500, right? And the remaining ones are largely postgraduates. However, it's still, which means that we've narrowed the number of students who are under great financial pressure down to around 500 who really face serious pressure in terms of qualifying students that have successfully completed their studies and can get through the university. The bigger number, of course, includes students who actually have lost their NSFAS or other funding because, of lack of progression. So, as you are aware, we've got about 70,000 applicants for less than 5,000 venues. We have to ensure that there is a churn of people coming through the system to allow others who don't have the opportunity. And I think that's just the broad context.
Yeah.
In terms of the financial support, the university has, out of its coffers, through a series of discussions with the SRC, last week, made available an extra budgetary, out of budget, 10 million rand that was put aside as a once-off COVID fund to take into account the fact that some of the parents of our students have found themselves in a difficult financial position since last year. As our internal COVID relief fund, we actually came with that to add to the already existing 17 million rand hardship fund that we work on as we identify each and every case of a student who actually is in a financially precarious position.
Prof, I just want to clarify some of those numbers. You've given us a lot of numbers to think about this morning. Are you saying that there are, out of these 35,000 students, you said over 35,000 students, who have now been enrolled for 2021, over 95%. Did you say there are 500 students who still face serious financial challenges in terms of enrollment? Is that correct?
That's correct. And we are drawing down that number. Don't forget that initially, just to clarify, when you look broadly at the number of people who are in the broad debt category, because debt varies from a small number to a huge number, it's around between 6,000 and 8,000, right? That's the often bandied about number. But if you forming on that number, others you find that just because sponsorships have come too late and then their debt levels are not that severe and are successful students, we are able to draw that number down. I think numbers are not fixed in time. They only shift as we try to continue with the enrollment process. So now we have, just of the 37,000 students we have, about the under 38,000 students we have on campus full-time, we have about 500 who are in a position that still requires attention. And we're working on looking at each and every individual case on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. So, Prof, how does the issue of historical debt fit into the picture you've just painted for us?
Well, effectively, as I mentioned in other previous conversations I've had, is that historical debt at the moment sits at 1 billion rand, right? I mean, just think of that number. You've got 9 digits there. It sits at 9 zeros and 10 digits. It sits at 1 billion rand, up from 400 15 million rand 4 years ago in 2017. So in effect, we've seen over the last 4 years is this ballooning of debt, which, and I'm not an economist, but common sense tells us that if you allow debt to go beyond a certain ceiling, you face what is called the fiscal cliff, right? So the challenge of this of the management system at best is to arrest that debt and ensure that it doesn't creep. Because if it does that, it doesn't make this institution financially viable,
right?
In the next many years to come. So I think we need to take wise decisions now that are prudent, that ensure that you arrest this debt whilst looking for other sources.
Yeah. And what the minister yesterday for higher education said, Blaine Zamande, that resources would be redirected from other budgets to try and address this issue, at least for 2021. Does his statement, do you think, go far enough to address the other issues you've outlined, including historical debts up from 415 million rand 4 years ago to 1 billion rand this year in historical debt? Does it go far enough to address that issue and to address what's going to happen in the future?
Well, look, it's that's 4.5 billion rand for the whole national system, right? It just allows those students that are actually probably are in a financially invidious position to apply for to enroll. But I don't think that is something that is retrospective. So to manage that, one way of doing that is actually a bailout, right? A bailout to for all universities. I mean, that is not the only one, and others are in a much deeper situation than we are. To do that would require a bailout or an appropriate debt management system. In terms of how do you work on collecting and ensuring that those that can afford to pay back the debt as part of their contribution to society. Because, a bad debt doesn't help the others if they are able to afford to pay, must pay.
Yeah. I mean, Prof, if we read the situation unfolding at Wits now and at other institutions for higher learning, these are students who, on the face of it, are fighting for better education in a context where our country is struggling with massive rates of unemployment. It's in all our interests that our young people get an education, and we need to address this as a matter of urgency. Do you agree with that?
I mean, of course I do agree with you on that one. And that's why we actually, within our limited resources, we are ensuring that every student who actually is academically capable and qualifies gets as much support as you possibly can. And don't forget that every year we roll out about 1 billion rand through our system of financial aid to cater for 25,000 students in our system. Council funded, university council funded students sit at about 100 million rand that we actually draw from the council to support. Then you've got other means of support from donors, from funders, and so on and so forth.
Professor Vilakazi, students saying they're going to take to the streets again. It's unclear what form their protest action will take today, but what is your message to the students from your institution that have been protesting over the past few days?
In any form of conflict, emotions get heated, and resulting in needless escalation. I think what we need to do now, and as an appeal I have to my students, and I'm talking to my students in particular, is that it's now time to go back and open a dialogue with management. We are in conversation with the Student Representative Council. I just appeal for calm. I appeal for, cooling of tempers, because escalation will lead us nowhere. We'll end up, in any case, as a national sector, I'm talking about the national sector as well, going back to the negotiating table and trying to resolve these things. We need to work the problem. Let's focus on how we can, as a broader university collective, within the entire national higher education system, work on addressing this issue. And it's a nationwide systemic issue. It's not a Wits issue.
Yeah, and let's address the issue not only for 2021, but for the years to come. Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, let me thank you for your time this morning on the AM Report. He is the Vice-Chancellor at Wits University. His message there to students is to continue with the dialogue and to find long-lasting solutions to what's been unfolding on the streets of Johannesburg.